Oluchi was a beautiful girl, but from a very poor family. Right from a young age, she has exhibited her brilliance in her academics, always topping her class despite the fact that her parents couldn't provide the basics for her. Her father was a bicycle repairer and her mother a full-time housewife. In the same village, there was a petty trader called Okonta, who was very popular. He seemed like one of the very few successful young men in the village. Despite his success, he was an illiterate. Children who patronized him often made jest of his spoken English and accent. Right from when Oluchi was young, Okonta took a special liking for her, always dashing her biscuits and monetary gifts. He became close to her family because of her. At first, they were very happy and thanked him for his assistance. Jokingly, he would call her my wife, and Oluchi would blush. She liked the fact that one of the very few successful men in the village was close to her, and her parents were also benefiting from his benevolence. As Oluchi blossomed, Okonta's likeness for her increased. One day, as he was going to his shop, he decided to stop over to see Oluchi's parents, only to find her crying. When he made inquiries, he found out that she was chased out of school for school fees, as her parents couldn't afford to pay her school fees. What made matters worse was that she was supposed to write her final exams. Okonta looked at her parents, who looked very helpless. That day, Okonta paid her fees and made a vow that as long as he lived, he would train her to university level. Her parents were so happy. It was no longer news that Okonta loved Oluchi, and it seemed he was waiting for her to finish school for him to make her his wife. Okonta consoled himself with the thought that since he was not so educated, that his wife would be, so she can infuse her Western education into moving his business forward. Okonta was so excited when Oluchi got admission into the university. Again, the parents were scared that she would lose the admission on financial grounds. Despite the fact that business was not so good then, Okonta sold one of his lands to make sure she could pay her fees and secure her admission. Even when some villagers felt Okonta was doing too much for her, he was past caring. Her parents appreciated him so much and even started calling him their in-law. Okonta was a regular visitor at the university, always bringing foodstuffs and money. Because of him, Oluchi did not lack in the university. On one of those his visits, as he was traveling back to the village, he had an accident and was on crutches for 4 months. Oluchi's life took a turn when she entered her final year at the university. The once grateful and humble girl began to change. Perhaps it was the influence of new friends, or maybe it was the exposure to the bustling life in the city. But Oluchi started seeing things differently. The simple life in the village, the kindness of a man like Okonta, who has sacrificed so much for her, seemed too pale in comparison to the allure of the new world she was discovering. Okonta, who has done everything within his power to ensure Oluchi's success, was overjoyed as she neared graduation. He dreamt of the day he would finally marry her. The day she would stand beside him not just as a wife, but as his partner in life and business. However, unknown to him, Oluchi's heart was no longer aligned with his dreams. In her final year, Oluchi started avoiding Okonta's calls and visits. She was often too busy with schoolwork or too tired from exams to meet with him. Whenever Okonta managed to reach her, their conversations were short, as she was always in a hurry to hang up. The excuses became more frequent, and her tone, once filled with respect and affection, grew cold and distant. Okonta, ever the optimist, was ready to make excuses for her. He blamed it all on the stress of final year. Upon graduation, Oluchi quickly secured a job in the city. This marked the beginning of her complete withdrawal from Okonta. The man who had paid her fees, bought her food, and taken care of her every need was now an afterthought in her new life. Whenever Okonta called to discuss their future, she would dodge the conversation, saying she needed to focus on her career. Her parents, too, began to offer vague excuses whenever Okonta asked about her, claiming she was just settling into her new life and needed time. Despite his growing suspicion, Okonta refused to believe that the girl he had loved and supported could betray him. He continued to hope that Oluchi would come to her senses and remember all that they have shared. But as months turned into years, it became clear that Oluchi had no intentions of fulfilling the promises she once made. She started dating men from the city, wealthy and educated men who she felt matched her new status. Marriage proposals came, but each one ended disastrously. Her first suitor was Chuka, a wealthy businessman with a charming smile and a sharp wit. He showered Oluchi with gifts, took her to expensive restaurants, and made her feel like the queen she aspired to be. When Chuka proposed to her, it was in the most extravagant manner. A grand party at a high-end hotel with friends and family in attendance. Oluchi was ecstatic, believing she had found the perfect man. However, just days before the wedding, Chuka's dark secret was unraveled. A scandal broke out when it was revealed that Chuka was already married with children in another state. The wedding was called off, and Oluchi was left humiliated and heartbroken. The dreams of her new life shattered. Determined to move on, Oluchi soon met Efe, a successful lawyer with a promising career. Efe was everything she thought of, everything she wanted: handsome, educated, and well-spoken. They began a whirlwind romance, and before long, Efe proposed. This time, Oluchi kept the news quiet, fearing another embarrassment. The wedding was planned to be a more intimate affair, attended only by close friends and family. But as the wedding day approached, Efe began to grow distant. He became elusive, his calls less frequent, his affection fading off. On the morning of the wedding, as Oluchi dressed in a wedding gown, she received a call that would devastate her. Efe had fled the city, leaving behind only a brief note. "I'm not ready for this." He had abandoned her without explanation, leaving her to face the guest alone. Her hopes dashed once more. Despite the previous heartbreaks, Oluchi didn't give up on finding her Mr. Right. Her third suitor, Kelechi, was a doctor who had recently returned from studying abroad. He was kind and gentle, with a genuine interest in her well-being. For the first time in years, Oluchi felt a sense of security and trust. Kelechi seemed different. He was serious, reliable, and above all, ready for commitment. They planned a quiet wedding in the village, thinking that a return to her roots might bring her better luck. But as the day approached, disaster struck again. Kelechi fell mysteriously ill just a week before the wedding, with no doctor able to diagnose his condition. His health deteriorated rapidly, forcing the wedding to be postponed indefinitely. The villagers began to whisper, and Oluchi's parents could no longer ignore the signs. Something beyond bad luck was at play. Her parents, now increasingly worried, sought some spiritual guidance. They consulted pastors, imams, traditional healers, but the answer were always the same. A curse had been placed on her. Desperate for a solution, they finally met with a well-respected pastor who revealed that the source of her troubles was the man she had wronged, Okonta. The pastor explained that in his deep despair, Okonta had gone to the shrine of his ancestors and wept bitterly. His tears, coupled with the heartbreak pleas he made, had invoked a powerful curse. He had asked the gods to punish Oluchi for her betrayal and ingratitude. The pastor warned that until she made restitution, her life would continue to spiral downward, and she would never find peace. Shocked and guilt-ridden, Oluchi broke down in tears. She remembered the sacrifices Okonta had made for her, the love he had showered her, and the dreams he had shared with her. He realized that in her pursuit of a new life, she had trampled on the heart of a man who had done nothing but love her unconditionally. Determined to make things right, Oluchi decided to return to the village. She knew it wouldn't be easy to face Okonta, but she had to try. With the pastor's guidance, she and her parents prepared to make amends. The journey back to the village was long and heavy with anticipation. Oluchi's heart pounded as they approached Okonta's compound. The man who once greeted them with open arms and a warm smile now looked older and wearier. He was sitting on a wooden bench under a large mango tree in his compound, staring into the distance. His crutches were leaned against the wall of his house, a reminder of the accident that had temporarily disabled him, yet he had still made sure Oluchi never lacked. As he approached him, Oluchi fell to her knees, her eyes filled with tears. She was no longer the confident young woman who had left the village years ago. She was now humble and penitent, seeking forgiveness. Okonta looked at her, his eyes betraying a mixture of hurt, confusion, and longing. For a moment there was silence, the kind that only years of pain could bring. "Okonta," she began, her voice trembling, "I have wronged you deeply. I allowed pride and ambition to blind me, and in doing so, I forgot the love, the sacrifice, and the kindness you have showered me. I forgot who I was and where I came from. I have come to ask for your forgiveness. Please, I beg you, take back the curse. I cannot bear this burden any longer." Tears streamed down her face as she spoke. Her parents too were all on their knees, pleading with Okonta to forgive their daughter. The village elders who had gathered around upon hearing of her return watched in solemn silence. Okonta looked at her for what seemed like eternity. His heart, once hardened by betrayal, began to soften. He had loved Oluchi with a love that was pure and true. He had envisioned a future with her, and though the dream had been shattered, the love remained. Slowly he stood up, leaning on his crutches, and walked towards her. "Oluchi," he said, his voice heavy with emotions, "I loved you more than my life itself, and wanted nothing more than to see you happy, to see you succeed. But you broke my heart. The pain you caused me drove me to do the things I now regret. I'll take back the curse, not because of what you have asked, but because I loved you, and I still do." With those words, Okonta reached out and placed his hands on her head. He whispered some words of forgiveness, and with each word, the curse began to lift. The heaviness that has plagued Oluchi's life started to disappear, replaced by a sense of peace she hadn't felt in years. The village erupted in jubilation. Okonta's forgiveness marked a new beginning, not just for Oluchi, but for everyone involved. The pastor, who had been silently praying throughout the encounter, declared the curse broken and led the village in a prayer of thanksgiving. Over time, Oluchi and Okonta rebuilt their relationship, but this time as friends. Oluchi, now wiser and grounded, dedicated herself to giving back to the village. She used her education and connection in the city to bring development projects to her hometown, ensuring that young girls like her will never have to choose between their dreams and their values. As for Okonta, he found peace in knowing that the girl he had loved so dearly had finally come back to him. even if not as his wife. He took pride in watching her grow into a woman of substance and integrity. The pain of the past was replaced by the joy of seeing her fulfill the potentials he had always known she had. As Oluchi's life began to turn around, Okonta made a decision of his own. Watching Oluchi use her education to bring positive changes to the village inspired him. Despite being an accomplished businessman, Okonta had always been aware of his shortcomings in formal education. The ridicule he faced from the children in the village and the distance it created between him and Oluchi had always been a source of pain. With a renewed sense of purpose, Okonta enrolled in an adult school. He was determined to improve his reading and writing skills, to learn more about the world beyond the village, and to better understand the business practices that has changed since he started. It wasn't just about education for him, it was about growth, redemption, and proving to himself that it was never too late to learn. Okonta's efforts in school were met with admiration from the villagers. Seeing a man of his age and status humbly returning to the classroom inspired others to pursue their own self-improvement. Oluchi, now working in the city but frequently visiting the village, often spent time helping Okonta with his studies and assignments. Their relationship, once strained and broken, was now one of mutual respect and deep abiding friendship. Okonta went ahead to buy a ring and kept it with the thought that on his graduation day from school, he was going to propose to Oluchi. And so, in the end, the story of Oluchi and Okonta became a tale of redemption, a lesson in the power of forgiveness, and a reminder that true love, though it may be tested, can never be truly broken.